Thanks for choosing Updates at Noon with me, Renee Fong. Good afternoon. The government will not impose a nationwide movement control order (MCO) or total lockdown despite the latest surge in COVID-19 cases. In a special televised address on the latest COVID-19 situation, Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin said if the government was to reintroduce a national lockdown, it would have a huge impact that could affect the social and economic system of the country.
Langkah ini jika dilaksanakan sekali lagi boleh membawa kesan besar yang dikhawatiri akan meruntuhkan sistem sosial dan ekonomi negara. Na'udzubillah. Apa yang akan dilakukan oleh kerajaan ialah melaksanakan perintah kawalan pergerakan diperketatkan secara bersasar di kawasan-kawasan yang dikenal pasti mempunyai kes-kes COVID-19 yang tinggi. Dengan ini, aktiviti ekonomi dan sosial di kawasan-kawasan lain yang tidak terjejas boleh diteruskan dengan amalan SOP yang ketat dan penguatkuasaan undang-undang yang tegas.
The Premier also believes that the healthcare system preparedness will enable the country to handle the COVID-19 spread without the government having to close down economic sectors as done previously. So far, he said the economic recovery process has proceeded smoothly. Tan Sri Muhyiddin added that whatever decision taken must take into account the interests of the country's 15 million workers, as this is to ensure their continued survival as well as the nation's economic stability. Meanwhile, Tan Sri Muhyiddin also admits that the campaigning for the recent Sabah state election was among the probable causes of the recent COVID-19 spike, as the Health Ministry announced yet another new record high of 691 daily cases yesterday. The Premier said that it was imperative for the election to be held after the State Legislative Assembly was dissolved as stated in the Sabah State Constitution. The Premier said the Election Commission had outlined standard operating procedures for campaigning but lamented that some failed to obey them.
Ini sesuatu yang tidak dapat dielakkan kerana kita tertakluk kepada peruntukan di dalam perlembagaan. Pilihan raya mesti diadakan dalam tempoh 60 hari selepas Dewan Undangan Negeri dibubarkan. Dan ini tidak boleh ditangguh. Saya sedar Suruhanjaya Pilihan Raya Malaysia telah menetapkan SOP tertentu bagi memastikan wabak COVID-19 tidak merebak akibat kempen pilihan raya yang diadakan. Tetapi malangnya ada SOP yang tidak dipatuhi.
In a related development, Tan Sri Muhyiddin said the decision on the closure of schools nationwide will be made at the special meeting of the National Security Council on the management of COVID-19. The Prime Minister added that the decision will be made based on need and upon advice from the Ministry of Health. He also said that parents need not to worry about the status of schooling sessions as the matter is currently being monitored by the Education and Health Ministries.
Kementerian Pendidikan Malaysia pula sentiasa memantau keadaan kes COVID-19 di sekolah di seluruh negara. Jika ada sebarang kes COVID-19 melibatkan warga sekolah, KPM akan bekerjasama rapat dengan Kementerian Kesihatan Malaysia dalam menanganinya. Dan dalam hal ini, Kementerian Kesihatan akan memaklumkan kepada Kementerian Pendidikan langkah-langkah yang perlu diambil bagi menjamin kesihatan dan keselamatan murid, guru dan kaki tangan sekolah.
Malaysia confirmed 691 new COVID-19 infections yesterday, another new record high in daily case figures. According to Health Director General Tan Sri Dr. Noor Hisham Abdullah, Kedah recorded 397 cases, while Sabah has 219 cases. He said the Tembok cluster alone in Kedah accounts for more than half of yesterday's cases, with 394 infections. The Health DG said there were 3 imported cases while the rest were local transmissions. Tan Sri Dr. Noor Hisham also said that a 1-year-old girl who was among the 4 fatalities reported yesterday was the youngest victim of the COVID-19 pandemic in the country. The country's COVID-19 death toll in the country now is 141 cases.
Warga negara Malaysia berumur 1 tahun. Kes dibawa mendapatkan rawatan di Jabatan Kecemasan dan Trauma Hospital Sempurna pada 1 Oktober 2020. Keadaan kesihatan kes didapati merosot dan memerlukan bantuan pernafasan. Saringan COVID-19 didapati positif pada 5 Oktober 2020. Kes disahkan meninggal dunia pada 5 Oktober 2020 jam 4.25 petang.
Malaysia also discharged 87 patients yesterday, which means the total of recoveries is 10,427. Cumulatively, the country's total number of cases since the outbreak began in January is 13,504. Currently, 31 people are being treated at intensive care units, with 8 of them requiring ventilator support. In a related development, Tan Sri Dr. Noor Hisham said the Health Ministry has also discovered another 2 new clusters yesterday. He said the Batu cluster in Taiping, Perak has recorded 7 positive cases, while the Ramai Ramai cluster in Sandakan, Sabah has recorded 20 positive cases. According to Tan Sri Dr. Noor Hisham, the Batu cluster was discovered after tests were done among government officials and their families at a detention centre in Taiping.
Sehingga 6 Oktober 2020, 12.5 hari, sejumlah 860 individu telah disaring. Keputusan saringan adalah seperti berikut. 7 kes dikesan positif COVID-19, 182 individu dikesan negatif dan 671 individu masih menunggu keputusan. Jumlah jangkitan masih dalam siasatan. Kluster yang kedua ialah kluster Ramai-Ramai Sabah. Kluster baru ini telah dikenal pasti di Sandakan Sabah. Kes indeks kluster ini iaitu kes 12,161. Merupakan seorang pemandu bas dan mengalami gejala sakit tekak dan demam bermula 27 September 2020. Kes dikesan positif COVID-19 pada 3 Oktober 2020 dan telah dimasukkan ke Hospital Duchess of Kent, Sandakan.
Coming up next, Kelantan PGA MMEA foil cigarette smuggling bid sees contraband items worth 3.7 million ringgit. Pengurusan Air Selangor Sdn Bhd has announced that water supply was restored to 84 locations, or 31% of the 274 areas in the Klang Valley affected by an unscheduled disruption. Its corporate communications chief, Elina Basri, in a statement said, as at 11 a.m. today, a total of 190 areas in the affected districts, namely Petaling, Hulu Langat, Kuala Langat and Sepang Putrajaya, are still in the recovery stage. She said action has been taken to stabilize the distribution system so that the water supply can be restored to the affected areas as soon as possible. Elina added that Hulu Langat recorded the highest recovery rate at 58%, followed by Petaling with 43% and Kuala Langat with 55%. Meanwhile, the recovery rate for Sepang Putrajaya was still at 0%. Elina advised consumers not to hoard or waste water to ensure the recovery process runs smoothly and according to its planned recovery schedule. She said affected consumers can check the Air Selangor app, Air Selangor official channels on social media, as well as visit their website at www.airselangor.com for regular updates. Previously, taps ran dry for over 300,000 households since Sunday, after Air Selangor halted operations temporarily at the Sungai Semenyih and Bukit Tampoy water treatment plants due to odour pollution. Another by-election is set to be held in order to fill the vacancy in the Batu Sapi Sabah parliamentary seat following the death of its incumbent Dato' Liew Vui Keong on 2nd October. According to Election Commission Secretary Ikmalruddin Ishaq, the by-election would be held in accordance with Article 54 Clause subsection 1 of the Federal Constitution. According to Ikmalruddin, the EC received the notice of the unexpected vacancy of the parliamentary seat from the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Dato' Azhar Azizan Harun, yesterday. He said as such, the EC will hold a special meeting on 13 October at the EC headquarters, Menara SPR Putrajaya. Elaborating further on the special meeting to be chaired by EC Chairman Dato' Abdul Ghani Saleh, will discuss key dates of the by-election such as writ of election, nomination day, polling day, voter register to be used and other preparations for the by-election. The 7th Battalion of the General Operations Force, PGA-7, has foiled an attempt to smuggle 1.9 million contraband cigarette sticks worth about 1.4 million ringgit. The contraband cigarettes were discovered in a lorry at Jalan Beris Kubu Besar in Bachok, Kelantan. Assistant Commanding Officer DSP Kut Majidin Cek Kujuso said a team of PGA members who were on patrol came across the lorry driven by a man in a suspicious manner from Cabang 4 Tok Mek Ngah, Tumpat to Kota Baru. Acting on a tip-off that the lorry might be laden with smuggled cigarettes, he said the team followed the vehicle for about an hour to identify the location of its warehouse. However, the lorry driver noticed the presence of the team and began to accelerate.
Ini adalah rampasan yang terbesar. Kali ini kita masuk operasi daripada 14 September sampai sekarang. Ini adalah nilai yang terbesar lah, tangkapan rokok.
All the seized items, including the lorry, were handed over to the Bachok District Police Headquarters for further investigation under Section 135, Subsection 1, Subsection E of the Customs Act 1967. Still in Kelantan, the Malaysian Maritime Enforcement Agency MMEA also thwarted an attempt to smuggle 200 packages containing 2 million white cigarettes in Pantai Sabak waters. Its director, Maritime Captain Muhammad Nur Sham Asmawi, said the MMEA personnel seized all the cigarettes along with 3 small boats and a lorry estimated to be worth 2.3 million ringgit, including unpaid tax. He also said that all the cigarette packages are in high demand and believed to be smuggled from neighbouring countries to be marketed in the state.
MO pada kali ini agak jelas kerana mereka menggunakan 3 bot. Bot pertama masuk seawal pagi, bot kedua masuk selepas itu dan bot ketiga masuk 2 atau 3 jam selepas itulah. Jadi susunan bot-bot ni akan mengelirukan penguatkuasa dan juga nelayan-nelayan tempatan.
Captain Muhammad Nur Sham said due to the large number of boats being used for this operation, MMEA believed that the syndicate was being run by more than 10 individuals. The case was being investigated under the Customs Act 1967. Guitar hero Eddie Van Halen dies at 65. More details in a foreign segment. Thousands of Indonesian workers protested Tuesday against a controversial new law which critiques fear will favour investors at the expense of labour rights and the environment. Labour activists and environmentalists have formed an unlikely alliance against the legislation, which was passed in Parliament late Monday after being promoted by the government as key to attracting investment. Human rights group Amnesty International called it catastrophic for workers, saying it would harm livelihoods and job security. Falim Kanan, an official with the Mighty Earth Environmental Group, said it would legitimize uncontrolled deforestation. The government hopes the bill, which aims to cut red tape by amending dozens of existing laws covering taxation, labour and environment regulations, will attract foreign investment. Although enforcement is sometimes patchy, Indonesia has tough labour laws, particularly involving foreign companies. Government Minister Airlangga Hartarto rejected the criticism, saying that simplification and synchronization to cut red tape is necessary. Indonesia is facing a looming recession, with the economy shrinking 5.32% in the second quarter this year due to the coronavirus. Former U.S. Vice President Joe Biden has opened up a 16-point national lead over President Donald Trump less than a month before the 3rd November presidential election. According to the nationwide CNN poll conducted by SSRS on Tuesday, the Democratic presidential candidate leads the Republican incumbent by 57% to 41% among likely voters. The survey of 1,001 likely voters was conducted between 1st to 4th October, CNN said, after the presidential debate and mostly after Trump tested positive for coronavirus. The 77-year-old Biden handily outpolled the 74-year-old Trump on a number of critical issues, CNN said, including handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, healthcare, racial inequality, and crime and safety. They were roughly even when it came to who would better handle the economy, with 50% saying Biden and 48% saying Trump. 52% of those polled said they have a positive impression of Biden, while only 39% said they have a positive view of Trump. While Biden may lead nationally, the election will come down to which candidate wins several battleground states. Biden has a narrow lead over Trump in most of the key battleground states. CNN said Biden has increased his lead among women to 66% to 32% and also made gains among younger voters, moderates, and independents. A car bomb on Tuesday killed 18 people, including at least 13 civilians, in the Turkish-controlled town of Al-Bab in northern Syria. The Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported that the explosion near a bus station in the town also wounded at least 75 people, some of them seriously. Observatory Chief Rami Abdul Rahman said the remaining 5 victims could not immediately be identified. Turkey and its Syrian proxies control several pockets of territory on Syria's side of the border following 3 military incursions since 2016. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for the car bombing, but there has been a string of attacks in Al-Bab since its capture by Turkish troops from the Daesh militant group in 2017. The town, 40 kilometers northeast of Syria's second city, Aleppo, was one of the westernmost strongholds of the militant group. US-backed Kurdish forces seized the last scrap of the satellite from the Daesh in eastern Syria in March last year. Syria's civil war has killed more than 380,000 people since it started with the repression of anti-government protests in 2011. The grim job of searching for flood victims in alpine villages and on the nearby French and Italian coasts has grown even more gruesome. Along with storm casualties, authorities say corpses from cemeteries have also been found around the Mediterranean shore, apparently swept down by the mountain by violent rains. A total of 12 deaths have been reported since the storm pounded France's Alpes-Maritimes region and Italy's northwestern regions of Liguria and Piedmont starting Friday. 4 on the French side, 8 on the Italian side. Prime Minister Jean Castex said more than 900 rescuers, 500 police officers and some troops were involved in the emergency operation in the mountainous region, which is home to 12,000 residents. He added that about 700 people were staying in hotels or other accommodation sites after being evacuated from their homes. A spokeswoman for the Alpes-Maritimes Regional Administration said corpses unearthed from cemeteries have also washed up on the Italian side. The cemetery corpses were in such an advanced state of decomposition that they were clearly distinguishable from recent storm victims. Forensic police working to identify the dead are among the security forces, firefighters, rescue divers and others helping Tuesday in the continuing search and cleanup effort. Eddie Van Halen, one of rock music's greatest guitar players and a founding member of the hard-rocking, top-selling band named after him, and his drummer brother died of cancer on Tuesday. He was 65. Van Halen's death was announced on Twitter by his 29-year-old son Wolfgang, himself a bass player who joined the band in later years. Eddie Van Halen was born in Amsterdam in 1955 and studied classical piano after moving with his family to the Los Angeles suburb of Pasadena in the early 1960s. After switching to guitar, he and his older brother Alex, who had taken up the drums, formed the early bands that would eventually become Van Halen in the 1970s, with lead singer David Lee Roth and bass player Michael Anthony. The hard rock band featuring Eddie Van Halen's explosive guitar solos quickly became a staple of the famed Sunset Strip music scene in Los Angeles before releasing their eponymous debut album in 1978. That album shot number 19 on the Billboard charts, becoming one of the most successful debut of the decade. It was the first in a string of top-selling albums that would make Van Halen one of the biggest rock acts of the late 1970s and early 1980s, with hits like Ain't Talking About Love, Jump, Panama, and Hot for Teacher. Eddie Van Halen's pioneering virtuoso technique earned him a place along the likes of Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, and Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin as one of rock's top guitarists. In 2012, a Guitar World magazine poll of readers voted him the greatest guitar player of all time. In sports, Podoroska pulls off almighty upset to reach French Open semis. The issue of naming the Perak football team Perak FC instead of Bos Gauros FC, BGFC, once its privatisation process is completed, will be discussed at the State Executive Council meeting. Perak Football Association PAFA President Datuk Sri Ahmad Faizal Azumu said the name Perak FC could only be used to replace Perak FA once paperwork on the name change is approved at the State Executive Council meeting. Datuk Sri Ahmad Faizal, who is also the Menteri Besar of Perak, urged all fans to remain calm as there is no reason to push the panic button.
Jadi apabila kita dah buat kertas exco untuk dibawa ke mesyuarat exco mendapat kebenaran menggunakan nama Perak itu, maka Bos Gauros FC itu akan ditukar namanya kepada Perak FC. Proses dia apabila you nak buat syarikat yang menggunakan nama negeri kita atau menggunakan jata negeri kita, mesti mendapat kelulusan daripada MMK. Jadi jangan panik.
Datuk Sri Ahmad Faizal said the Perak Football Club had been successfully registered and the name BGFC was only used to speed up the club's registration last month, as the use of the name Perak needed the prior approval of the State Executive Council. What is important now, he said, is that Perak win its final Super League match against Kedah at the Perak Stadium on 10th October and subsequently qualify for next season's AFC Cup competition. The Malaysian National Cycling Federation MNCF, in collaboration with the National Sports Council NSC, are targeting 15 young women riders from their talent search program to be roped into the national backup squad next year. The program, which aims to unearth talents aged in the 13 to 15 bracket, is divided into two phases: field tests in 5 different zones nationwide and specific tests at the National Velodrome in Nilai, Negeri Sembilan. A total of 100 cyclists will be chosen from the field tests to be held in the Central Zone from 24th to 25th October, East Zone from 30th October until 1st November, South Zone from 7th to 8th November, North Zone from 14th to 15th November, as well as in Sabah and Sarawak from 20th to 21st November. The 100 cyclists will then undergo specific tests on 22nd November, and the best 15 will be chosen to make up the backup squad to be trained by former national track cyclists Fatihah Mustafa and Saud Hussein.
So, ini adalah satu pembakar semangat lah untuk saya challenge diri saya sendiri untuk dapatkan pelumba yang bertaraf dunia. Mungkin lebih baik daripada saya dan mungkin boleh orang cakap first Malaysian untuk bawa balik medal dekat Olympic Games nanti.
Meanwhile, NSC Athletes Division Director Jeffrey Ngadirin said the 15 youngsters chosen would be placed at the NSC full-time. According to him, the youngsters will study at Sekolah Sukan Bukit Jalil (SSBJ) and receive assistance in terms of equipment like bicycles. He added that next year they will start competing in local meets before they are sent for overseas tournaments. Argentine Nadia Podoroska became the first qualified to reach the French Open semi-finals in the women's singles draw when she caused an almighty upset to beat third seed Elina Svitolina and make history by booking a spot in the French Open semi-finals thanks to a 6-2, 6-4 triumph on Tuesday. The world number 131 on her second appearance in the main draw of a Grand Slam emulates Belgium's Philippe de Wolf, the only qualifier in either of the singles draw since tennis turned professional in 1968 to make it to the last four at Roland Garros in 1997. Svitolina, one of the pre-tournament favourites after winning the Strasbourg International last month, was on the back foot throughout, failing at the last 8 stage for the third time at the clay court Grand Slam. Svitolina held serve only once against her unfancied opponent. Podoroska next faces either Polish teenager Iga Swiatek or another qualifier, Italian Martina Trevisan. Meanwhile, unseeded Danielle Collins battled past Tunisian Ons Jabeur 6-4, 4-6, 6-4 to reach the French Open quarterfinals for the first time in her career. World number 57 Collins raised her level after the opening 9 games of the first set went with serve when the American broke the edge ahead in the contest as Jabeur made an unforced error from the back of the court. The big-hitting 26-year-old then raised to a 3-0 lead in the second set, showing the craftiness to pull off a superb drop shot in the second game as Jabeur appeared to wilt on court Philippe Chatrier. But the Tunisian regained focus to win the next 5 games in a row before dragging the match into a deciding set. In complete contrast to the opener, both players traded breaks freely at the start of the decider before Collins come back from 0-40 to hold for 3-2 and staved off a late comeback attempt to seal the win. Collins will face Australian Open champion Sophia Kenin next. Meanwhile, French prosecutors said on Tuesday they have opened an investigation into alleged match fixing in a French Open women's doubles encounter. The probe concerns the first round match on 30th September between Romanian pair Andrea Mitu and Patricia Maria Tig and Yana Sizikova of Russia playing with US player Madison Brangle, according to French sports daily L'Equipe and German newspaper Der Welt. The game in question is the 5th of the second set won by love by the Romanian duo after Sizikova served 2 double faults. L'Equipe reported. And that concludes today's edition of Updates at Noon. In our top stories, Sabah elections among probable causes of COVID-19 spike. Tune in to News at 10 coming up at 10 p.m. on Saluran Berita RTM on My Freeviews channel 123. You can also stream the news by surfing RTM's MyClick. Thank you for watching. I'm Renee Fong. Have a pleasant afternoon.